Hey, what's going on YouTube? It's Moose Preparedness. I'm Moose. I wanted to do a live stream because I wanted to get ahead of the power curve a little bit. So for those of you who don't know, it's about, early afternoon. I guess it'd be 1 o'clock Eastern time. And then there's an AT&T outage going on across the United States. Some of it's getting resolved from my friends and contacts over on the East Coast. But yeah, it's being felt all over. So I wanted to kind of debunk a few things and push it out so that way you kind of see what's going on. So it happened about 2:30 in the morning, and all of a sudden AT&T specifically was having issues. Note, it was not any other service provider, so it wasn't Verizon, or not as in graded numbers, so it wasn't your Verizons or other people like that. So that automatically tells you that it shouldn't be something natural. But however, we still have those folks out there who want to be internet experts and warriors saying, oh, it absolutely was a solar flare. It had to be a solar flare. Well, all right, let's think about this. It was 2:30 in the morning Eastern Standard Time whenever they first had their issues. Interesting. Why does that matter? Well, it means that the Earth was on the other side of the globe. So unless you believe in a flat Earth theory, which I don't typically prescribe to, odds are that the sunlight is not going to make it, or the solar radiation is going to do it. Now, could it go through? Yes, absolutely. But, highly unlikely. So the sun wouldn't come up for, I think, another 4 or 5 hours at that standpoint. Because I forgot, I looked up the time for when the sun was supposed to rise on the East Coast, and it's somewhere around 7 o'clock a.m. So that should automatically debunk it. Second is that it didn't affect everybody's phones. It just affected specific carriers that happened to be on the same backbone architecture. Odd. So we've got that, and then we've also got the issue of all these folks who are talking about it could be a malfunction, it could be, they had some kind of data issue or whatever. I'm not buying it. Here's why. So my wife and I have almost identical phones. I have 1 year newer than hers. We're on AT&T as a carrier. We have the same software update. We have the same everything, except for my phone is 1 year newer. Now, when she laid down to go to bed, she turns off her phone. My job, doing what I do, I need to be on call in case there's an issue. All right, so I left my phone on. She woke up this morning, turned her phone on at about 5 a.m., 5:30. I was up with her. My phone worked. Hers didn't. Odd. Seems very specific, right? So literally laying right next to me, same everything except for my phone's a little bit newer. She has problems. I don't. Why do I bring that up? Well, if this was something like, let's say, some type of cyber bad actor, that cyber bad actor that we're talking about may have access to older phones that may not have the same encryption or have the same style. So for those of you who don't speak the cyber language, you don't operate in binary code. If you have older systems and things like that, sometimes it leaves you open for vulnerabilities because people have more time to take a whack at them. So for those folks who decide that they want to go after, let's say, Windows 10, right? They've had 10 years or however long they've gone after it to try and find exploits for it, which is why they bring up things like, hey, you should always patch your systems. You should get the newer operating systems, because they identify this stuff and try and fix it as they go along. When you don't do that, it creates more issues. But let's assume that could be an issue. What do I personally think it is? Now, I have access based off of what I do for a living, where I may or may not have access to more high-end intelligence. I have not gone anywhere near that today, so that way nobody can accuse me of any of that, potentially spreading information that might be considered classified. I have none of that information whatsoever for this particular topic. So, what do I think? I think it was a trial run. I think that this could be a test. Now, why do I say that? Let's look at the systems that were affected. So if I affect older phones, older wireless phones, I'm going to use them instead of cell phones or landlines. So if I'm using older phones, I have now prevented people from being able to call out to go talk to emergency services. I prevented them from being able to talk to relatives. Okay, mildly interesting. What does that affect for other people? Well, let's say you have to go into your banking app for two-factor authentication. So if you're trying to go into your banking app to get two-factor authentication, there you go. There's a authentication. It's been a long day. If you try and do that You can't receive any of your text messages. Might be an issue. What else could be affected? Well, shipping could be an issue. Most of your GPS or maps are not actually from GPS. They're based off cell phone towers. So whenever you look at your phone and you're driving to go find out the new hot restaurant in town, you're not actually triangulating GPS off of satellites flying in the sky. You're actually basing your whole thing, your whole position on the earth based off the triangulation of cell phone towers. So if you've got 3 around you, it says you're roughly here based off of your signal bouncing on those towers. Now, if that signal no longer goes back and forth, you don't really get that signal, do you? That could be concerning. So now to take that and extrapolate it out against a bunch of other places like UPS, Amazon, name your carrier, could that be a potential issue? 100%. So to me, this looked like a trial run for something that could potentially have issues down the road. And I say a trial run because you always want to see, if you're a bad actor, what are you doing and what are the people you're trying to mess with? What do they do? So for example, if they were able to oversaturate our cell phone market, if they were able to poke through and start saying we're denying service to these phones at this level, I now know what the emergency response is for all those people. I now know that it affected these banks, but not these banks. It affected these cell phone carriers, not these cell phone carriers. It affected this person, not that person. Is that the intended target? And they got to watch what the actual response was. So whenever they do it for real, if this is a probing kind of thing, they now have a better idea on what to do in order to mitigate your mitigation, if that makes sense. So it's kind of like, I know you're going to go left, so I am going to go right completely instead. So I've thrown you completely off. Now, why did I want to push this out there? Because I think the media narrative, and I think the message is going to be, oh, it was an error, somebody got it screwed up, somebody forgot to put this, or somebody changed the 0, or our bad, we did this. And I don't think that that's going to be accurate. I think we don't want to admit that how vulnerable some of our stuff is. So when I brought up the channel from my wife's homeschooling stuff months ago, or a couple weeks ago, one of the things I wanted to do was preparedness, and this is part of it. Why do I bring it up now? Because what was your communication plan with your folks or your family if you were affected? So as I said, my phone worked today. My wife's phone did not work today. So how do I communicate with my wife if there's an emergency at the house or vice versa? Interesting. I didn't have a plan, or I had one, but it didn't work. Why? Because it was all based off of cell phone networks. That's something I got to address. Maybe something you want to address too. Other things. What happens if the cell phone network, which is what we predominantly are relying on for our ATMs or for banking, did anybody consider that? What if that's on that backbone? Could be. The ATM I went to today, one of them worked, one of them didn't. One of them said it was out of service. Could it have just been out of service because it was poor maintenance or is the wrong company? Absolutely. But imagine if you had done that at a much larger scale. It prevented a whole lot more people from having access to their ATMs or to funding. Again, 2-factor authentication on your phone to try and get access to your email accounts, your YouTube accounts, your account that you have going to text message. If you get rid of the cell phone signal, which is what happened, my wife wasn't able to authenticate in any of her accounts, including our banking accounts. That's a problem. Now what? Well, we don't have a back door. How many people remember or have email turned on for their 2FA? There's a lot of people who do not have 2-factor authentication turned on that says email as well if text is unavailable. Might be something you want to look at for your own stuff so you don't run into any issues should this happen again. Because do I foresee this as a potential probing attack? Yeah, I do. I think it's odd. And before anybody goes, oh, you're just a conspiracy theorist or a tinfoil hat wearing guy, I do this kind of stuff for a living. I may or may not be, aware of capabilities or do similar things or have heard of similar things where this is exactly what I would do. Poke the market, poke the target I'm after, see what response I get. So that way I know the next time I know their default. So now I can go around it to get the desired effect that I want. So again, I don't think the solar storm thing, this could have been a solar flare. No, that's complete and utter crap because it would have affected everybody. Again, as I said, my wife's phone, it didn't work and her phone was turned off. My phone did work and it was turned on and we were 5 feet away from each other. There was no physical way that can happen in the same room, same construction, same level of shielding from whatever electromagnetic interference would have happened. So don't believe that. That's a bunch of malarkey. I don't buy the physical stuff because, again, my phone shouldn't have worked if there was a malfunction somewhere along the switch or the board. My phone shouldn't have worked at all. Same with my wife, or my wife's didn't, mine did. If it was a true, hey, this system doesn't work from this particular tower, this particular hub, that shouldn't have happened. It's not like it goes, oh, this phone should work, this phone shouldn't work, or this phone is on this part of the tower, this phone's on that part of the tower. No, that's not how it works. So the only thing left, if you kind of go down the line and go down the tree of is this possible? Yes or no? Is this possible? Yes or no? The only thing that makes sense is that there was some type of a bad actor. And again, I think we're not going to get the true story on it because we don't want to admit just how fragile the system is. So use this as an opportunity to try and get after it, as an opportunity for you to try and improve your own position. Because as I said, I went to work, my phone was working fine. I was able to talk to my wife using some backdoor communication. We used different types of data apps that were strictly data-based, and she was able to use Wi-Fi. So we were able to communicate that way. But what happens if that had gone out? What happens if you're using, a carrier like AT&T for your internet service and that goes out as well? So how do you talk to people you know? How do you talk to emergency services? There were several that said that they were down. Use this as a great way to train, to figure out what happens if this. If this, then that. If that doesn't work, then this. And if that doesn't work, then this. So the Army, they call it a PACE plan. Primary, alternate, contingency, emergency. I always have a plus at the end. So find something. My primary cell phone. My alternate is I'm going to use my work computer because that's a little bit more secure. My contingency is if you're close enough to home and you have a radio system and you've already got that worked out, use that. Emergency, I don't know. Again, we went through it and we got all the way down to C for us, and we were able to finally talk. So use this as an opportunity to try and figure out what's going on. But again, look at yourself and look at it and apply it across time or to your life in other measures, because this AT&T thing, unfortunately, I don't think this is the last time we're going to see stuff like this. And I just wanted to hop on because, again, I don't like the current narrative of AT&T clamming up, saying, oh, we're not going to say anything to anybody, and nobody else wants to talk about it. And we'll probably get swept under the rug and nobody will remember it by next week. All right, this is Moose from Moose Preparedness signing off. Have a good one, y'all.